There's a particular kind of discouragement that doesn't come from failure. It comes from effort repeated with no visible result. If you've ever kept doing the right thing while nothing responded, I want to talk about that space tonight. The one where doubt grows quietly and faith has to work without evidence. There was a season where everything I did felt like planting seeds into ground that had already decided not to change. Not barren in an obvious way, just unresponsive. You show up again. You choose patience again. You act with care again. And nothing shifts. No new growth. No confirmation. No sense that your effort is even registering. At first, I told myself it was timing, that growth takes time, that roots form underground before anything breaks the surface. And I still believe that. But there's a point where patience turns into a question, not an angry one, a tired one. How long do I keep doing this before I admit it's pointless? That question doesn't come from weakness. It comes from honesty. I remember repeating the same choices day after day, choosing integrity when shortcuts were easier, choosing calm when reaction would have felt satisfying, choosing consistency when no one seemed to care. And I started wondering if I was confusing faith with stubbornness. Because faith, at least the way people talk about it, is supposed to feel hopeful. This didn't. This felt quiet, unimpressive, almost invisible. The ground didn't resist me. It didn't reject the seeds. It just didn't respond. That's harder. Resistance gives you something to push against. Silence gives you nothing. I watched others move on quickly, change jobs, change values, change stories about themselves. They adapted to the environment, and for a moment, I considered it. Not out of envy, out of fatigue. It would have been easier to harden, to stop caring so much, to stop planting things that required patience. But every time I imagined that version of myself, something felt off. Not morally, personally. It felt like abandoning a language I still believed in, even if no one else was speaking it anymore. So I kept planting, not dramatically, not optimistically, just faithfully. I stopped watching the ground for results and started paying attention to my posture. Was I planting to prove something, to be seen, to earn something back? Or was I planting because this was how I wanted to move through the world, regardless of outcome? That shift changed everything. Not the ground, me. I stopped expecting growth to justify my effort, and strangely, that made the effort lighter. Still heavy, but honest. There's a kind of peace that comes when you accept that some seeds aren't meant to grow where you planted them. That doesn't make the planting meaningless. It just means growth might happen somewhere else, later, quietly, in ways you'll never witness. And that's a hard thing to accept if you need proof. But if you don't, if you can live with the idea that your work matters even unseen, something steadies inside you. You stop negotiating with disappointment. Stop needing confirmation to keep going. You plant because planting is who you are. If you're listening to this while wondering whether your effort is wasted, I won't promise you visible growth. I won't tell you when things will change. I'll just remind you of this. Ground that stays silent doesn't invalidate the seed, and a life lived with integrity doesn't require an audience to be real. Here is a metaphor to ponder on. Imagine writing letters to people you may never meet. You choose your words carefully. You mean every sentence. Then, instead of mailing them, you bury them. You place each letter in the ground, cover it with soil, and walk away. No reply, no confirmation, no proof anyone will ever read them. From the outside, it looks pointless. Why write something you'll never see received? But the act wasn't about response. It was about intention. Planting seeds in silent ground feels like that. You show up, you act with care, you choose integrity without feedback. Nothing grows immediately. No signs, no applause. But beneath the surface, something is happening that doesn't need your permission to begin. Seeds don't break ground on your schedule. They respond to conditions you can't control. All you can do is plant them honestly and trust the ground to do what ground does. Silent ground isn't barren, it's just private. And not everything meaningful announces itself when it begins.